Welcome back to the It's Bigger Than Me podcast. I'm your host, Molly Gomez, doing something a little bit different on this episode. Just one episode before this, you heard that I had the absolute pleasure of interviewing my great friend, Rae Irelan. What an incredible story, what she's doing in the podcasting and AI space. So amazing. Well, she interviewed me on her podcast. So now you're going to get to listen to Rae interviewing me and how we dive into how your calling needs your voice. And we're digging in deep on this. Check it out.
All right, this episode, we have an incredible guest coming on, and we're going to be talking to the woman who knows she has a voice, knows she has a story, has been using it, but knows not at her full potential. So, we're going to be diving in to the behind the scenes of Molly Gomez. She's going to be sharing what it was like to be a TV reporter and then move into the coaching space and help women unlock and amplify their voice and story. She's going to share some of the things that she's seeing that women, female entrepreneurs are doing to self-sabotage when they're either sharing their story or not sharing their story. And this is going to be an episode you're going to want to listen to the whole thing because at the end, she actually even has a gift for you guys. So stay tuned and enjoy this episode. Hey everyone, I have a very special guest today. This is Molly Gomez. She's a former television reporter turned international speaker and story strategist, and she helps people find their voice, own their authority, and really build from that place of sharing their story. So Molly and I connected because we are in a small inner circle mastermind with Ali Spitzbergen. And Molly just came into the room, so to speak, shining bright, speaking with authority, and really just, I think, like carrying this fire, and activating the group. And I know that there's such similarities in a lot of the things that I like to share about, which is sharing your voice and your story. And Molly just has such a unique version of this because of her background in television. So I want to just start this out by saying this episode can of course be for the person that maybe has been, having fear around their voice or insecurities come up or just feels like there's delays or timidness around their voice. But I also want to open the door for this conversation to be for the woman that actually already feels like she is using her voice and to talk about what that next level is. If you've already been on TV, you've already been, a performer, you've already been a speaker, what happens next? And so Molly has been through business transitions, career transitions, and I think there's just such a stirring that's happening currently I would say in both of us in the way that we are able to speak up and share and use our voice. So I specifically wanted to kind of just start the tone there that this is not only for the woman that doesn't feel like she's claimed her voice yet, but really for the woman who's already claimed her voice. And let's explore what Molly has to say about those next levels. So Molly, thanks so much for being here and spending this time with us.
Yes, it's an honor to be on your podcast, Rae. I am super excited to be here.
Thank you. I just gave the super short version, but give us a little bit more. What was your story in becoming who you are today?
Yes. Well, I usually say long story short, being a former TV news anchor and reporter, I tell people I got into that industry to tell stories until I realized what kind of stories they promoted. And it really just dehumanized you at the end of the day. It's always death and destruction. And if it bleeds, it leads. And all things that if we turn on the news right now, it's exactly what's going to be playing on every station. But I realized 2 years in, and I'm in my early 20s at this point, what a powerful skill set that I can learn. I don't think I'll be in this industry forever. So I really took that and I was doing reporting, sports reporting. I did weather. I was on the anchor desk. I was like one of their top breaking news reporters. I would go live by myself with this little backpack that had like an internet signal. And it was fun. And I got to meet so many people, pull out the stories in them. And most of the time the news were like, can we just make it a little bit darker, a little bit dingier? And I just knew it was time to go. So they actually ended up firing me over a before and after transformation photo I have and being able to help other people like just step into their best self. So I said, if this industry wants to fire me over helping others and I wasn't even making money to hardly make ends meet to begin with, then we'll see you later.
Wait, what was this photo? I'm like, how?
It was one of those where, I mean, this photo was basically like it's like you're in like a sports bra and shorts, and I mean, I was pretty close to having a six pack, and so not that that was the goal. I was just leaning out and shredding and really going towards something. Didn't think it was going to set the news world on fire and then result in that. And when I pushed back and I said, this is my own social media, I'm not taking it down, that was the beginning of the end because I had a voice, I had other objectives to support people. And now I won't post those kinds of things. Back in my 20s, a little bit different.
Yeah.
And it was such a blessing. I'm actually in the process of printing out the email in my new office of Molly no longer works here at this station and framing it to be a reminder of what a blessing it was to be fired, which is a whole podcast in and of itself.
Totally, totally. And okay, so I love this because I just actually felt like the Lord prompt, like, okay, this is not just for women that are quiet, but for the ones that maybe are speaking out already. But that's a big decision. You're feeling empowered in your voice, but it seems like you just started seeing like the message matters. It's not just about being empowered in the voice, it's actually the message that I'm sharing and speaking. So when you were in that moment, it sounds like you were pretty okay with being fired and you're like, okay, let's go on to the next piece. But there's a lot that you have to let go of. I mean, there's identity, there's ego, there's things that you've done in your life to get to that type of stardom, of like showing up and being on TV. So, what did you have to like let go of in order to say, okay, let me walk out in faith and everything's going to be okay?
Oh, I would say another big moment before I got fired happened where I call him my almost ex fiance. I found out that he was cheating on me. And then he ended up saying, I'm moving across the country. So, first band aid rip. Then, literally, like maybe a week or two later, the next just really sticky band aid of me getting let go. So, I was at that point where I'm like, okay. And I felt this weight lift. It was like this burden that lifted because I didn't know how I'd get out of the industry. And clearly I was at a rock bottom. So I said, I didn't know what I was going to do at the time, but within a week, I made a plan of, I'm never going to work for somebody else again. I want to jump into entrepreneurship because at the time I had about a year or so in network marketing where I was making, just some side hustle cash. Loved the industry, loved what it stood for, or what it stands for still. And so I packed up my car and what wouldn't fit, I sold. And I moved to Southern California with like $2,000 in my bank account. And anybody that knows Southern California, that goes nowhere. So I was sleeping on
Okay.
friends and family's couches.
Oh my goodness. Okay. And then fast forward a bit. So now you are helping other people with their story and sharing their truth. There, I feel like, is a really big difference between being a good communicator and then helping others find their voice and story. So walk me through that transition. Like, how did you get into seeing, oh, I can really help someone share their story and I'm really good at this? Like, what were some of the key things that you realized that you had?
So in network marketing, I was always somebody that was a guest trainer on teams and corporate calls of the social media branding and messaging. So I realized I kind of had a knack for that. From there, I actually stepped into the digital marketing space where I was working with my brother-in-law with his digital marketing agency, helping coaches build and scale until I was like, wait a second, like they need what I have. How do they communicate effectively to really take their lived experience and increase their market authority? So that's where my first consulting agency was born in 2018, the end of 2018, and just really helping people like build that personal brand so you can have that connection. But what do you say? Like, how do you convey through storytelling to really not just give facts, but be able to have people see themselves in your story? So I've been doing that like nearly a decade, and really I call it pulling out the gold in people. There's so much lived experience in there that we just stuff down, or even women or even men that are at a higher level, there's certain stories that they're terrified, and I will use that word intentionally, terrified to share, because if somebody knew that about them, then they have to get on the defense. But there is a way to be on the offense and share your lived experience and how you've overcome it. And that's what really grabs people and magnetizes them to your message. Otherwise, we're just in the noise. Everybody's saying the same thing and chasing the strategy. You should be chasing after what should my voice sound like so I can actually start speaking to the people I'm meant to serve.
That is so good. And I love putting it in those terms of being on the offense or defense. When you're able and you say, okay, I'm going to commit to share my story, and then you go after it and you start sharing and you're vulnerable and you're doing it from an empowered place, not from a weak or what would I call it, just, sort of trauma sharing, right?
Yes.
There's such a power that comes from being able to be real and authentic. And so I'm curious, like from your clients that you've worked with and even yourself, what have you seen happen when you do decide to do that and you do it well? Like what are some of the results you've seen in their businesses?
In one word, I'll give you a personal story so you can just see I'm not just talking about it, I did it. And so I'm like, I'm leading from the front so you can see I didn't want to do it, but I did. And this is the fruit. But in one word, freedom. Because when we play on the offense and we're like, and the Lord's leading you to tell this story, you definitely want to align it with Him. You don't want to do it if He's not leading you to do it. You don't want that smoke, as I like to say. But it brings freedom, and your shame is no longer sitting in the background. It is now, it's not shame in the forefront. It is freedom to show people this is what I've overcome. And if more people showed the messy middle, showed the overcoming part, there would be a lot more hope injected into society today. But we just want the Instagram reel and the highlights. So I know it's part of my mantle to be able to share these messy middle parts. And one of my messy middles that I shared was I used to smoke marijuana for 10 years, telling myself I had to come down after work and I need to chill out and all these things until I had this radical encounter of this prayer and fasting in the beginning of one year with a church that's not even in my state, 2 hours ahead. Long story short, I heard the Holy Spirit say, "Are you done with that?" And I knew He was referring to give it up. So I packed up everything, hundreds of dollars worth of stuff. I knew I had to video it because I'm like, this is going to be used at some point. And I dropped it off in my trash chute. It's my only TikTok that's ever gone viral. Not that that matters, but when you read the comments, you'll see what matters. You'll see the revival and just the breaking of chains in the comments. I was terrified to share that. And the reason why is I was a co-founder and leader of a massive kingdom global membership. And so a lot of women look to me. So I'm like, I am going to be canceled for sure. The opposite happened. I would never have guessed. I struggle with that too. How did you do it? Because yes, even though the Lord delivered me, you still have choices. You can go back, but then it really uncovered even other addictions that I had. And it may be like comforting with food or maybe having a little bit too much to drink or other things that He started to highlight. And so I went first and I showed people, look, here's my receipt. And there was freedom and breakthrough for myself. I felt so free after that. And then other people are like, you know what? Maybe I can do that too. And when we do that, again, we're on the offense, not the defense. Because imagine if somebody found that out. Now I'm having to play catch up in defense. That is a mess. No, thank you.
Totally. I think this is so cool that you did that so quickly and that the way that God worked with you, He just wiped that so clean that you could show
Yes.
up without that shame and guilt and just say, this is the commitment. This is what I've been doing. This is what I'm doing moving forward. And that's accountability. People, I and many people pay hundreds and thousands of dollars for a really good commitment, right? And so I just love that you were just so fierce and just went out on a whim and did that. But I think there's something to attest with how God worked with you in that moment and you being able to like really receive
Mm.
that that grace that God gave you, because there's a lot of people that also go through stories or have a moment and then they share, but it's like they're still holding on to it, they're still
Yes.
clinging to it, and so then there's like an energetic mismatch of what they're
Mhm.
saying versus what you're feeling as a viewer or as a receiver. I had a really interesting moment recently. I was just speaking on stage 2 weeks ago and I shared my story. And it was interesting because I hadn't shared my like testimony story in a long time. Usually I'm more so just like talking about business and that type of stuff. But for whatever reason, I just knew that this was the event to like go up and share my testimony and let the business kind of come out from that. And because it had been a few years since I'd shared it and it had been 10 years since like the moment I had, and this is my car accident story for anyone that's listening and trying to kind of piece it together that knows me. So this is the car accident story. And It was the coolest thing because I stood up and I shared, and it was really one of the first times where I felt complete freedom. And I had
Mm.
shared it 100 times. I mean, more than 100 times. I've written a best-selling international book, podcast, like all of this stuff. But there was like a new level of freedom that I felt, and I think it was just kind of the way that God processed and worked with me. But I think it's just cool. Like I love to hear your story because I think sometimes people think, well, it's going to take a while to do something, and maybe it will. And if that's your case, it's all good. It might be 10 years from now that you're sharing your story and feeling complete freedom, like I just did. And it was amazing. And I've no regrets of it taking that long to like fully get embodied into my system. And I just love that, Molly, you share your story of how fast it could happen too. Just the suddenly moment of that full embodiment.
Oh gosh, I love that you just owned it and you felt that freedom. Like that makes me so happy for you and everybody that got to experience that in the audience at that event, because we never know what part of our testimony is going to speak to somebody else. The other day I was speaking inside of a community that I love so dear that my friends run, and it was on chasing God down and the quiet time and just being public of, how I just chase him down in the secret place early in the morning. And I would have never thought that would be a training of some sort to teach other people, but you never know. And then even when I shared that video, back to the marijuana story, it took me a year before I shared it. And when the God said, you need to share it, I said, absolutely not. Are you kidding? I'm not sharing that. He's like, do it. And it was this tug of war. So it wasn't a, sure, I'll be just forthcoming with this. It took a tug of war, but it unlocked that freedom, releasing the shame. And now it's like, okay, Lord, what other story do you want to use? Because I know the enemy wants to hold me in bondage, but you get the say, you get the freedom, and you get to have all the glory of how we get to turn around for his good. And so many people just are focusing on the what will go wrong. Start focusing on, if I share this, what will go right? What will be in the benefit of other people?
That's
Because
good.
you said this earlier, there's a complete difference between a good communicator and a public speaker. Public speaker is about self. How did I do? How did I look?
Mhm.
But a great communicator is, how did I make them feel? How did I shift the atmosphere? How can I take this lived experience and be like, how can it bless somebody else to maybe open up that door so they can see freedom for themselves? And that is what makes great communicators. And the world needs more of them. So I love that you gave God the glory on that stage when you could have just said business only, business as usual. But God, I want you to come in and be in the forefront. And I'm sure that made so many people connect with you on a deeper level, which will help in so many different areas for you and them.
100%. And thanks for clarifying. I think that's good to know that there was a little spaciousness, and there's like stages of identity too that we get to step
Yes.
into while we share a story, and you share again and again and on different stages, right? It's always fascinating. Like sometimes we'll have a new client come in to do their podcast, and I'm looking at this, a woman for instance, and I'm like, okay, wow, you have like a multi 8-figure company, you've been doing it for years, I see you online all the time, you're doing all the social media, this and that, you're running your own events. And then they come to us and it's just a new stage, the podcast world, and they freeze up and they're sweating, and and all the things are going wrong, and they're like, it's taking hours to plan this. I'm like, do you usually plan your other lives? No, never. And so it's just so funny,
Yes.
each stage, each event, each season that we're even in, it'll shake and shift the story and the identity that we get to step into and embody.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And it's like we get to meet people where they're at, because nobody would ever know this multiple 8-figure business owner would be trembling when it came to being behind a mic. And I have come across
Multiple,
that too with my
multiple of
clients.
them.
Yeah, it's this whole new level. When I unlock this, what will happen? It's a release, it's a surrender, and it's so personal. Your
Yeah.
story is so personal. It's like a thumbprint, right? Like it's unique to everyone. I'm in the same boat where I have seen so many women in that, multiple 7, 8-figure range where you couldn't tell. But that's because social media can have a mask. But what people want now more than ever is, with the rise of AI and all this content, and trust me, I use AI all up and down my business. But if you don't have discernment, you don't know what's real and what's not. So
Mhm.
podcasting, live video, allowing people to really connect with you, that is a valuable currency. And so many people can't hide anymore. And so we get to step into that voice. So I love that you're holding that space for these business owners to really step into that and, walking along with them hand in hand when they probably are thinking, she probably thinks I'm crazy and I don't know what I'm doing. And I don't need to be hand in hand, but they do because it's new. And your voice is such a powerful instrument and should be cherished and nourished and just cultivated in the right environment.
Absolutely. It's a whole other new muscle, right, for
Yes.
anyone. So, with these leaders, let's talk about maybe six, seven figure leaders that you see. How are some ways that you see they are maybe self-sabotaging or, hurting themselves in the way that they're either storytelling or not storytelling? What's the most common thing you're seeing right now?
A big part of that, it's really what I've seen lately, it's delegation. It's okay, you need to delegate more things so you can spend time on this muscle as you shared it, right? The only way you get better at it is using it, going out there, giving yourself feedback, or having somebody in your corner where I would give a lot of my clients feedback. It's a big reason people will come to me and work privately is give me your expertise so I can sharpen and get back out there. And then they can really build that up. But it's delegation because they'll get lost in, oh, I need to do all these things and I don't have time. So then I ask them this simple question. When are you going to stop telling yourself that story? When are you going to step into this and actually take it on because it is a priority? If people don't know your sound, they won't know you and they will skip to somebody else. So you need to get that out there. And so it kind of wakes them up of, you and I both know I have the real conversation. You need this. So when are we going to start taking it seriously? Like you do your bottom line, you do the data, the analytics, the numbers, all these other things. This should have been number one. And I tell people, I've helped a lot of people starting out in different phases of my career. And I love that phase for the simple fact that they're green, but it's also like you're coming to me at the right time in the beginning. Because if these people who are 6, 7, 8 figures, if they did that a long time ago, imagine how their voice would have evolved over time. But they get focused on the strategy and have somebody else put their voice in when it really just needs to be theirs. And then people are like, ooh, I really connect with him, connect with her. And that's what people are looking for. They want transparency. They want to connect with you. Otherwise, they'll go to something else that they'll connect or something else that's familiar, whether that's good or bad. So it's time to really dig in and use like our voice as the strategy because that's the thing that a muscle that most people should be focusing on here in 2026.
Oh, that is so, so good. And I completely agree with that. There's also some of my favorite people to follow are ones that I've been following for a long time because I'm invested in their story. I don't know them, and it's like funny to admit that, right? But like for sure there's people, there's families, like one of our biggest ones would be like the bucket list family. I think a lot of people are
Yes.
familiar with them. They've been traveling the world. Like, I want to do that. Okay, well now we're 10 months into doing that and I'm still being like, okay, what are they doing? And so there's certain people that you get to like kind of hook into their story, but the only way that you can develop that relationship, and it is so weird to say like relationship because for instance, we don't know the bucket list family yet. We're gonna become besties with them soon. But but
Yes.
like we don't know them, but we feel so connected and
Mhm.
like you gain that trust. You do gain like true authority. It's not just authority because you have nicer clothes or like look more successful. It's like no, like actually, if I ran into the bucket list family, I would ask them like, "Hey, where's your favorite place that you've ever been?" Like I really would go to them with those types of questions because they would be the authority, right? So I think, there's a whole thing that we like to do is we talk about stop trying to be the creator, stop trying to be a social media creator because that's old school. We don't need that anymore. There are plenty of
Yes.
social media creators that, do their thing and that's their life. But I think the people that you and I work with, you're not a social media creator. You're an impact influencer or you're a business owner. And so we need to just be able to see your documentary. We want to see you
Mm.
document what's happening in your life and people want to grow alongside of you and see you grow and step into those new identities and changes and shifts along the way so that you are that authority in your space. So, do you see that too? That how cool it is to watch someone document versus create? And do you have any tips for maybe documenting?
I love that you said people want to see your documentary. I love that because when you think about all the streaming apps and everything that we have, and there was a statistic, and this was a couple years ago,
Mhm.
7 hours a day people watch video content. So I tell my clients, why not yours? They're watching the silliest stuff just because people are picking up on it. Why shouldn't they be watching yours? One of the things that people love the most are behind the scenes. They love behind the scenes. What makes you you? What pouring into this mind that has created X, Y, and Z. So I'm always sharing whether it's like I go to the gym every morning, or I'm in the sauna, or eating habits, or even just being quirky and fun with my husband and having a good time. Like allowing people to see, like, hey, they're human. This is the habits behind the scene, and then also this is how you can work with them because that's what builds in the. I feel like we're friends and we don't even know each other. I feel like I could have a barbecue with you and our families could come together. Like that matters. That
Yeah.
matters more than anything. It's not this polished, like, just this business script and commercial. So it's really, if you think about if your friends are coming along with you, like we all have our phones connected at our hip, like just pull it out, grab a few things. I know we maybe want to get off a little bit more than we're on, but it's important because it builds rapport. It
Mhm.
builds rapport. And the last thing I'll say is this. When I started my entrepreneurship journey, which I consider that in network marketing, got my taste of it, I didn't have any kind of mentors around me that I resonated with. Nobody in person, nowhere. Until I found one in that company and I only followed her online. And then I had the spark, the fire of how did she get there? I was following her content, following how she did things, following the behind the scenes and loving what I was watching. And I was like, this is it. So I started to reverse engineer. And I had never met her up until maybe like, I don't know, 9 years later. And I told her, I followed you for years until I figured it out on my own. So you were my like mentor slash not because I just was following you in the shadows. And you never know when you're doing that for somebody. You
Mhm.
absolutely never know. But just be relatable. People want to see that. Like that's the part that builds that connection. And then when they like you, they will either at some point work with you or refer people to you. And it's so easy because the rapport and the connection is built.
So true. So, so true. So, as someone, you are amazing at documenting, sharing your story. What are some, and we'll kind of have this be the last question, but I just want to understand what are some of the beliefs that you hold about yourself and your identity as a storyteller? So that way we can kind of pull the behind the scenes out for any of the listeners that are saying, okay, I can do this. Like, I'm on board. What are some of the things that they might need to adopt or shift or at least explore?
When I think about, and this is the name of my podcast, which I didn't know, I had this phrase on my heart for a long time. And then years later became the name of my podcast called
Mhm.
It's Bigger Than Me. Everything that we go through, it's actually a blueprint of, okay, how you've overcome this. That could be a story in a conversation, in a podcast, in a post, because people need to see that part. They're not looking for all of the glitz and the glam. And the big wins are great, but there are a lot of mental wins. There's a lot of other breakthroughs that you need to have in order to get to those bigger wins that society deems most important. Honestly, the more I dive into this journey, it's right here what I'm telling myself every day, how I'm feeding myself, who I'm around, proximity, hence why we met in this inner circle because proximity is so important. So when it comes to just what you put out there, your story, a lot of people they automatically will tell me, even some of my clients, like, oh, that's a lot of work. I don't have the time for that. I'm like, well, you must not want it bad enough then. You must not want to have that impact bad enough or that next business level bad enough. And I just get really honest with them instead of just petting their bad habits of, oh, it's okay. It's probably a lot. No, like we actually need to step into when are we going to stop telling ourselves that story because somebody needs what you have. And so, even with the little bit of time that you have, time block, record some things like whether it's behind the scenes, a thought for the day. I have this incredible, and I can give it to you if it's helpful to your audience. It's called the 3 pillar exercise, which really allows you to brain dump to pull out. Here are the things that you can talk about that other people can glean from. So there's always something there. It's a matter of do you just want to pick up this and just get started? Doesn't mean you're going to be at a level where people have been doing this for 10, 20 years, but you are starting today and that you're ahead of 98% of people by just starting today. But somebody needs what you have. And there's freedom for you on the other side of that. So it's thinking about what do people need? What do you like watching? Here's a great just little tip. What do you like seeing on social media? Maybe go start create some more of that. So you can see the blueprint, but put your own words in it and really just allow your voice to transform your life and other people.
Yeah, so good. So good. Bottom line, just get started.
Bottom
Leave
line,
your
yes, just go
excuses
do
at
it.
the door. So good. Well, thank you, Molly, for coming on here and just blessing us with your time, your expertise, your wisdom. You've walked through so much. You've done this for so long and worked with so many people. So, truly a blessing to be able to hear a little bit about your behind the scenes. We'll definitely drop that resource in the show notes for everyone, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye.
Go. Remember that your story is so much bigger than you. If this episode encouraged you, maybe challenged you, or even had you feeling that you're not alone in this process that we call life, share this with a friend who needs to hear this message today. You can go ahead and connect with the guest that we had on today's show, or even myself. You'll find all those links to connect in the show notes below. And just know God is using even your voice to be mentorship to somebody else. Stay tuned for the next episode. We'll see you next time.